Yes.
Well, I told you earlier that it's a week that it wraps up for May, so we should have been excited. But it's also a week that has a lot of bad memories, particularly with what happened last year.
Like, yes, I was saying earlier, and this is in reference to the June 3. Yeah, like that's just so gory.
Behind me.
Yeah, the June 3. What? This has just distracted me. We're making reference to the June 3 combined, I call it combined tragedy of
twin disaster.
Yes, and fire. And I was saying earlier that I wasn't in the country at the time, but I remember I came just about a couple of days or so after. And I hadn't heard about this, but you see, life is so spiritual. I tell you, you know, when we made our descent, you know, when you're making your descent into you know, like onto the tarmac, there was some gloom. It's inexplicable. I really can't explain that feeling that enveloped me. But there was something just not sitting right, you know. And then I got to the airport, and everything was dark. I think I'm looking at it from a spiritual point of view. Until I saw, you know, I turned on my data and saw pictures of the president first. I have never seen him look so fallen and grief-stricken.
That's what I said since the first day.
I have never seen that man look this sad. And so I said, what could have gone wrong? And that's when I read, and then the driver also told me that this had happened a couple of days ago. My heart went out because, you know, and then there were pictures, gory pictures of charred bodies.
These are the ones on your screens, I think, at that point when it was happening.
Look at that woman wailing.
The media did a very bad job that day, showing us
I
all
know, I
those
saw
dead
charred bodies.
It's good we didn't show that. We didn't show that picture, And but 1 year on, I mean, the question is, any lessons? Have we learned anything at all? I think so. I think so. I think I think people are more careful in terms of, you know, where they go to around that time, that when it rains, the filling station is not necessarily the first place you have to go to seek refuge or to think that it's safe simply because there's a shade there. But in terms of systems, in terms of structures, in terms of institutions, I don't think a lot has changed in the last year because it's the same thing. We still have the same. We haven't the Odo. Last time I watched an international documentary on
still dredging,
and they're dredging. Just about 30%, I'm told, of the work have been done. And quite apart from that, there's a certain fear, I think, that shouldn't be there on the part of authorities, you know, having to eject people where they have to eject them. People need to be, if they have to be forced out of a place that they have, it doesn't matter if they claim they've been there for 20 years, 30 years. I've heard one too many stories of persons who say, oh, our grandmothers left us here, we've been here.
That you've been doing the wrong thing for so long doesn't make it right.
So for me, those are the things that we've got to really tackle, you know, from the head, and really get the people, if they are in water, if that is what the reason why, because especially Circle, water still sits. And now, you know, my last interview with them on Saturday, I went there to the same people, I spoke to them. The woman says that she's cringes, you know, just at the thought of another storm, and that the last rain, in fact 2 Saturdays ago, it rained heavily, and that the Saturday when it rained, her house was flooded. It was up to her neckline, and she's still in it. And I asked her, and she said she doesn't have money. I said, Madam, what else are you waiting for? For all your children to be consumed before you move? They like the place because they sell. They make money from that place. It's a very... They'll put that above anything else.
It's a 24-hour economy.
Exactly.
It's an economy that doesn't...
So it's a very difficult...
Another Oxford Street.
For me, that's why I'm saying that we can exert some force. We will have to, first of all, enforce the law. We've got to be careful and ensure that people are living up to the standard and safety that we're talking about. I think I was reading in the papers that, or online, that the Ghana National Fire Service have taken out, I think, some certificates, shut down some filling station on the Wager Road. It's fine, but why do it now? We've got to be seeing more of this.
I'm happy because, you know, right after the incident, the authorities decided to go back and check all these filling stations. Some of them were closed down. In fact, I saw one being pulled down around Amasaman. And a lot of work had gone into making sure they operate in a very safe environment. Earlier, there were attempts to stop them from stop the stations from being used to do other commercial activities like restaurants and all that. But it doesn't work because when you go outside, you find these gas stations with restaurants and all other commercial. So the good thing is that the fire service have been active since. They've been to these stations. There's always a check on them. Like you said, the Lucky station on the Wager Road, the fire service has revoked their certificate. So
what do they check for? Fire extinguishers and fire extinguishers.
So for me,
but God forbid, but in the event of a disaster like this, I wonder how much help one extinguisher can be. Do you
know a very interesting admission one of the victims made? She said that when it rains, that's when they dump all their fecal matter in the rain. That's when they throw all their rubbish away.
It
washes off. But it chokes off somewhere else, and it comes back to you.
In fact, enters into people's rooms.
And when I asked her, this was off camera, I asked her, she says, "Oh, in tree, please forgive me. Many toilets dance. Toilets so it doesn't matter if the rain comes to her room and that goes out. So long as after a while it will recede. See the mindset. And she comes back to the mindset. And right, I agree with you that this thing about filling stations. No, what are the filling stations doing? Because preliminary investigations from the fire service says
there was a cigarette.
Not even
that was lit up. I read that about a committee set up.
But even if a cigarette.
But you see, talking about law enforcement, you mentioned law enforcement, and I think that. And we're talking about this in the context of the flood, the fire disaster. And then the investigations seem to suggest that one Ofosu or something was smoking when it was raining. And of course, he didn't...
there were lots of theories. Before you continue...
Before you extinguish the cigarette bud.
No, but before you make that point, the only way that would work is if it meets a naked fire.
Yes, but absolutely. How are you even smoking... at a gas station.
Because you know what I mean?
Because there was a leakage already. Smoking, but I thought
the
there
leakage
was supposed to be no smoking. Regardless, there should be no smoking signs. No, every gas station you can't light up a cigarette.
No, Moon, it's from the market. The market is behind them, but because the valve was not properly shut, right? The water went in there, so it's already spread. So everything around them, all the survivors were saying.
Oh, so that cigarette story is
but it came from the back. It's not at the filling station.
There at the filling station.
But because it had gone, it had surrounded them.
Right.
It has so the little spark just went like that. It was fire.
Absolutely.
Like that.
And this is interesting. Elsewhere, gas stations, or we call it filling stations here, they're not sited in residential areas or in places where you have
gas stations.
Yes. Like filling stations. You know what I mean? No, elsewhere we call it gas.
No, I know.
But like filling stations, they are in like commercial locations. You don't have homes and private residences. It's too close to
20 or 10
miles. So you see, the key thing here is this. Now there was a leakage, which we accepted. Now, could we have been safer if there was a leakage and yet it was raining and there were no floods?
That's interesting.
So the flood is indeed the cause of the whole thing. The whole station was flooded.
No, the other way around.
Right, the other way around.
No, wait. Now, if the leakage was coming from the tank under the gas station, they would have seen the fuel around their premises and they could have dealt with it. But this was a situation where there were floods all over.
Actually, they wouldn't have.
So
they wouldn't have.
It's possible that even the Gulfing, they knew it. You know how? Do you know what? There was a place in Tema. Do you know what they did? They knew the thing.
Just blatant negligence.
They put a bucket around and they were selling fuel to people. The fire service went there and shut it down. They knew there was a problem.
So you see, the point I'm making is that the flooding is key to what we're talking about.
Absolutely, I get what because people had to swim.
Because if there were no floods, first of all, the fuel wouldn't have gotten mixed up with the water.
No, but regardless, if it got in contact with fire, it would have caused an explosion.
Every year we have the floods, right? And
there is a historical who went to the station because there was flooding around the station, around Vienna City and around there.
Yes.
So they want to take refuge at the station.
Yes.
Not all of them, those who died were at the filling station. There were some who were behind the markets. Is it Odor, whatever market?
Yeah, and they died because there were floods there, and the fire extended to that point.
Because there was a spark, because the fire came. Those are the filling stations.
So how do we deal with this
flood
issue? If we handle the flood issue, we have a long way, we'll go a long way to deal with the problem there. I mean, for me, if there was a leakage and the flooding was at a level that could be controlled, we would have gone a long way to at least reduce what happened, because the fire would have been at the station, and perhaps, who knows, the fire service
would have been the same damage, because look, the water is traveling.
Yes, but if there were drains and the water was in the drains,
I mean, I wouldn't.
But okay, but even without the water, even without the floods, if there was a leakage,
it would have still been.
And we actually always see it. We see signs of the grease on the ground.
Right.
There still would have likely been an explosion.
Okay, but Bryce, how about those who were the drivers who were in their vehicles were filling their gas? People burned, sitting in car, and it was instant.
No, we saw that. Yeah,
it was instant. They were just burns, just like that.
Well, you see,
I'm glad that they shone the spotlight on the filling stations now, so we get to see what they are doing. That a lot of them actually take things for granted. How can you run a filling station? You have a problem and you put a bucket there to collect fuel.
And don't also forget that the fire traveled that far because it was carried by the water. Okay?
Yes,
there was fuel on the surface of the water.
That's true.
Yes.
Sure.
And
that
so
is true.
I remember a guy said he was standing in front of the police station at the Raka police and could see the fire just traveling up that stretch. So you see, I think tackling the flood is
I totally concur now.
I agree. I agree. But stations have to do more. You can't run something as dangerous as that and be lax with your safety of the persons who come there. I mean, seriously.
I'm sure you have a lot about what
Because in fact, when you go to fill your tank, you're actually supposed to turn off your ignition.
We don't
a lot of us don't even do that.
We don't know.
Anyway, so the station should enforce it. Make sure we
All right, so let's hear what you have to say about
others have to
the
say.
issue.
Friday marks exactly a year the June 3 disaster occurred, and the disaster took away over 150 lives. A year on, we ask, have our attitudes changed, or are we still in the same attitude that could trigger another disaster? This is Daily Rant. Keep talking.
I've walked about 7 minutes from EcoBank to Circle. There's no dust around. So when I buy a bottle of water or a sachet of water, where do you expect me to put it?
Sure.
Whether I've gone to the university or no, I would dump it on the floor, which is bad. I wouldn't do that. But we expect that the authorities in charge, AMA, Environmental Protection Agencies, they should, be responsible.
Would you say efforts to ensure that this doesn't occur again, it's laudable?
Yes, it's very laudable, but it looks like it's missing. Because 1 year on, and Nkrumah Circle look dirty. I don't know who we are honoring here. The overhead look make the euphoria about the area beautiful, but if you respect to filth, it still continues. It's even worse. So we don't know what the authorities are doing.
Campaigning for so I didn't see Omobaha. I'm say Omampani Kraba be able to Wahasa and Penny for Baha. But still, near Koso and Ekoso. A ball lay among for to Busa, Yesuban and Sasabako.
It just was a bit messy,
or a bit messy. Men that because a bit messy because I sell filling station we. So waha nsuo to a bufa so baba yeah na wasi BC
yeah subani yeah den e betima
before say better na what am for the monitor na niema was e gu akwan mu say that's beginning na what am for man ye mo near the ballers ni begum no ma wa be sesade a eno beboa ama efi no a nsuo to a na atwoku no ebe ko na akọ because wo hwe a from a free PNT eba ha nyina that's be ba kokora ni ha nti obi no musuo pe na wato atwene onu musuo na wato atwene nti se nsuo to ade na wo say eba twi na
on timi nka so enyomofo to bet omonso no ebe de na on timi mfa we pure water rubber and show pocket emfa nkofie
oh one obetimi de ase o pocket nipa ne de yanso ye ka ho bi but empanifo ni yese chinchina ye de das bi sia na se nipa ne ye hye ne keten te say ye beto aba empanifo timi kire say ye ntomfa fam ye ntomfa soro enti say wo de das bi to na say wo ye program na ka say obi amfa ngu das bi no amfa ngum na say so mu a ye be ye o say ade we ya e me so mo be
I'll say yes, because we are learning from the last year disaster, and you know Friday is going to mark exactly 1 year when this thing happened. Just last week I saw people, taking off dirty things from their gutters, making free way for the trench, you know, for the drainage of the water. I know we are having rainfall this time too. I think we are learning from our mistakes now as a Ghanaians.
And society, so be the I know I try to get them. Obi bibi we are obi kwa John and I know they are to get them. The by a stress on my boy, not yet union I had they keep it kind of clean.
Side the way by June said at the end of the year, need feet because time and soon at the end happy and I didn't swim. When I'm Ujina was soon most a baller. I bet choke you. I probably say a baby and I ABC is near a baller. Nina baller and a postal side Nina, baller no so count.
Mimi hospital ban after all. Still, me that's who near a coso problem nina. Bibi and Sakrabia, my match say improvement be and I say ye be at Bema and such I be abba. Such a be any mind near coso problem. That's all still.
Nim say ball and so account. But sometimes when I'm calling obi to come on pay water, if they saw the better na meeting in the better no they could that's been on ye. But our better at so abonting say Oko council so be the what them of say bia open a wako square na open and winning say keep Ghana clean. Ni account still. And society bia em buy. Gata no nam na say uche mu a say so rubbish then e wo mu ntino ye be sure de omo be ye de me fu anasa ban wo bibi omo be ya afa ho a saa de mani net so be cha no
ya ma hu si ne yakoso seke ha no enye kura gota no ayayim ama gota no wa fine but still omo say tu bola ni gum ama je say no problem no ai san ba bio say je omo san be yim bio egusu enkofo na wo gota no ho nyina na so omo pomodi ana wo mo pa mo omo fi o because obi aye bola bia no de be gum Friday is so be ni 1 year assembly see ye so ye hu sakraye bia
it's am say na we are victims am hu ne say bia they were ade na ekoni e betuna say sibio
oh me pompa yentimi nche say be sibi mana say be bampa na ye bo say mana sibio see and the nipa bre wo mpa nti ye pompa ye say mana sibio
oh nyame di mu nti bibia ma bio de say government ni hwe na tembia gotare de tembia na say oyim
Entimi sibio me chemo yesu dim amba bio
obi ani onu ma like obi expect say sa de inside sibim and ade ne susu na esi ye so wo hwemu a say enye filling station kenye petrol na nke nipa dodo enye nti no media make say filling stations na adosu on my fa corner bia wo be hu obi filling station ni obi dan nie wo she be bia filling station wo ye fie na next house na ahye no wo then find say filling station e be baby e tisante ye hwemu say filling stations dey adosu do unam every filling station so monte so mine
me say Ghana for cars na dom so say ya the filling station no crofo gusua omusi filling station cars e no na say wo but still now ni anka wo ne nkan wo no munya to omusi o mbo be yakura men kan ko far away from the city
ade ameton ska kakra ekuta mi na ni na instudi ni ko nti ye tra ban so omo ayen ye so ye ko man no hu bi omo ayen
aha me pa because firstly you break me education now because say na afeni my school my complete JHS me ba be physical I dey atuaso
ye dey ahakra ndo ye kon say ye be san ye dey ate bia ye sre ni say ye dan no munye bibi man omo ye hu bibi man na so omo ye hu bibi man so ye sre filling station dey ye pese be ben bi because say dey to ye ni ye sro pa even say kwa to ye na si akra na ya bo hu anytime we buy bia na I say I am especially who posters omo mu dey be posters crowd around and na say asem na kra.
These are the concerns of some victims of the June 3 disaster, and their concerns are that the siting of filling stations should be checked and also calling on government to ensure their livelihoods are improved. What are your concerns on this? Go onto our social media pages. On Facebook, it's NewDay on TV, and on Twitter, it's a NewDay TV3, and also hashtag TV3New. Go there, post a comment or two, and Bridget O2 will read them and share them with the rest of the world. So we came to you from Central here in Accra, and this has been Daily Rant.
It's nice to actually hear from the victims.
Right, they were right there in the midst of it.
One thing is certain, though, you can see that it's drawn a lot of them closer to God. But the point is, you're still maintaining those practices that are inimical to the safety of the place.
Dumping of refuse and all that.
No, actually, so, a lot of the victims thought it was an act of God. Because when it sparked, they said, "Hey,
no, for those who survived, if I know lots of them say they're going to church on Sunday to thank God for their lives.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
because they were spared from,
they have
from
to.
that.
Okay, cleanliness next to godliness. So
yes, that's most important, absolutely.
Right.